Welcome to Frasier on Film, the Frasier TV show podcast with a twist. Each episode of the podcast visits each episode of Frasier across its 11-series run. But our main focus isn't on the good doctor himself, no. It's going to be one of the guest appearances on the show that week. That could be one of the many A-listers who called into Frasier's KACL radio show, or just someone who made a fleeting appearance at Cafe Nervosa. We'll delve into that actor's backstory, look over their cinematic offerings, and deep dive into one movie specifically. By the end, we'll see if we can make a connection between their character in Frasier and their character in the film we've just talked about. So you'll be hearing about icons and wash-ups, legends and starlets, sherry drinkers and beer guzzlers, blockbusters and B-movies. It's going to be an education in it all. But what if you don't really watch Frasier? That's fine, you'll probably know the actors we're talking about. And if you don't really know the actors we're talking about, then that's fine too. You'll know the movies. So whether you're a fan of Frasier or you're a fan of film, this is the podcast for you. So, pull up your favourite bar stool at McGinty's and tell the wine club you'll be running late, because this is Frasier on Film, and I'm your host, Ben Murray, and you're listening. What if Frasier was written by Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner? You would get young Frankenstein mixed with young Sheldon, and then you'd get young Frasier. I shudder at the thought. Hello, how are we doing, everybody? Welcome to Season 1, Episode 9 of Frasier on Film and of Frasier itself. Today's episode, Selling Out, connects us with one half of the legendary comedic partnership that was Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. It is Carl Reiner. Perhaps best known for his turns behind the camera, we'll be focusing on one of his comedy performances in front of it as we tackle The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. Now, although he's a huge name, this is going to be another one of those discovery episodes for me. I don't know lots about the man, other than he's responsible for various comedic creative outlets. I'm guessing there may be some similarities to Robert Klein in that respect, but no offense intended, with much more acclaim attached to Reiner's name. Similarly, there are so few movies with him in starring roles, and The Russians Are Coming is a complete unknown to me for that reason. The only thing I do know is that it's a long fucking title, and I'm already dreading having to type that out in the show notes constantly and say it twice constantly while doing promo for this episode. Do you think I can just say The Russians Are Coming for the rest of this episode without having to say it twice? You'll know what I mean, I think. Anyway, folks, sit back, get ready for a little education. We'll be coming to Mr. Reiner shortly, but first, as always, let's visit Mr. Crane and find out what's going on with Frasier in this week's episode.
Roger, at Cornell University, they have an incredible piece of scientific equipment known as the tunneling electron microscope. Now, this microscope is so powerful that by firing electrons, you can actually see images of the atom, the infinitesimally minute building block of our universe. Roger, if I were using that microscope right now, I still wouldn't be able to locate my interest in your problem. Thank you for your call.
Episode title, Selling Out, air date 11th of November 1993, writer Lloyd Garver, director Andy Ackerman. This episode is the episode where we are first introduced to Bebe, Frasier's agent Bebe. But before we get there, Carl Reiner actually opens up the episode with a call in to the show. We'll play that shortly, but his call paves the way for one of Frasier's best ever comebacks to a caller. Bulldog's back as well, and he's back because Frasier refuses to do promotion for a Chinese restaurant at the KACL station, but Bulldog will. It's easy money as far as he's concerned, but for Frasier, it's a question of integrity. Bulldog has no integrity, as we see, because we get one of the most offensive Chinese impressions. I'm amazed that this is still streaming, to be honest with you. The fact that you can stream this and this clip hasn't been cut, there's a few scenes like this in various other shows that I'm amazed stays up. Only Fools and Horses is packed with them, and there's still lots on streaming, but it'll only be a matter of time. So this is going to be a collector's edition episode soon, because you won't be able to hear that, I'm sure. Anyway, Frasier sees the payment involved for this gig, and he ends up consulting with his dad and Daphne about the ethical issues around it. Daphne says, if you like something, you try it, then you can promote it. And he does that. He goes to the Chinese restaurant with his dad and Daphne. I have to say, I don't think I've ever bought something just because a celebrity endorsed it. Well, except perhaps for Johnny Depp's Sauvage aftershave. And it wasn't because Johnny Depp was promoting it, it's because I'd seen him promoting it when I was in the perfume store. I picked it up, smelt it, liked it, bought it. So I guess that is me. That is the power of celebrity. Anyway, now we get our proper intro to Bebe Glazer. Frasier's new agent, Bebe Glazer, played brilliantly by Harriet Sansom Harris. She is not so dripping with her manipulative words as she will be later in the series, but she absolutely still is Bebe in this first episode. She has a snake-like brooch on her jacket, I notice in this scene. She's fast-talking, and she's lying in wait for him in the hallways of KACL. And when he comes out of his recording booth, she seduces him immediately.
You're not represented by anyone. How would you feel about signing on with me as a client? If your answer is no, it won't hurt my feelings.
Well, I really don't think so.
Why?
It's not that I'm not flattered, Miss Glazer, but, you see, I'm not really a radio personality, per se.
Oh, come on, Dr. Crane. I've heard those spots you've done for that Chinese restaurant. You make me want to stuff my face full of egg rolls and I don't know what.
Thank you.
He finally caves in to her wishes when he realises that him signing with her and taking up more gigs, paid gigs like that, might allow for a great college tuition fund for Frederick. So there's one of Bebe's first great manipulations, which she'll continue to do. Frasier then does a series of commercials. He does something for a Redwood hot tub. He does something for Emery's nuts, despite the fact that he has a nut allergy and he knows that it's unhealthy and dripping with oils. But Bebe seduces him. She's a wonderful performer. She grasps her hands in the air and gestures outwards. She's so theatrical. It's an incredible character. Unforgettable. So grudgingly, he does this nut shoot, but he has problems with the script, and he doesn't like saying being part of a script that says I'm a nut, no, I'm a nut. Naturally, who is his sounding board for his ethical issues? Niles, Cafe Nervosa. Niles brings him crushing back down to earth.
Why do you feel like that? Well, for one thing, my co-stars are dressed up like an almond and a walnut. Now listen, Niles, I need your guidance.
Frasier, I don't see this as a problem.
You don't think this is the selling out of Frasier Crane?
Oh, certainly not. You sold out a long time ago. No, the moment you agreed to do that call-in show, you sold out.
Oh, Niles, you are such a purist.
Niles says he knows Frasier sold out a long time ago, so it doesn't matter whether he does this commercial or not. And the episode closes with Frasier not doing it. Dr. Joyce does it instead, which he knows will make Freddie happy because, after all, she's his favourite psychiatrist. It's a good episode. It's not a great one, but it is absolutely classic and elevated by the addition of Harriet Sansom Harris in the role of Bebe. As I said, she will go on to feature throughout the show, and recently in the revival, she appeared in that. So her character is long standing. She has a brilliant legacy in Frasier. Her performance alone ensures this episode will stand the test of time. I'm also enjoying that each week, for the most part, we're consistently coming back to a question of ethics, of morals, of psychology. Every choice by Frasier or other characters is painfully meditated on, which is the source of the humour of the show and much of the heart of the show as well. It's why I love it so much. There is an absence of heart in this episode, but then what do you expect when Bebe Glazer's in town? A few bits of trivia for you. The film that Niles references, in which a movie star let everyone look up her skirt, is of course Basic Instinct. This is the only episode of the series where a sound can be heard during the end credits. So while the tossed salad and scrambled eggs theme plays, as Frasier emerges from the hot tub gasping for air, you hear it. And Frasier's, this is interesting, Frasier's denunciation of nuts as an unhealthy junk food apparently does not reflect general medical consensus. As we know, nuts are considered something of a superfood now, boasting healthy unsaturated fats that lower cholesterol, high levels of fibre, protein and various vitamins and minerals. Just don't get the honey roasted ones, I suppose. Enough Chinese takeout, enough Redwood hot tubs and Emery's nuts. Let's rewind all the way back to the beginning of the episode and let's listen in to Carl Reiner's Roger, who, like Robert Klein's caller Gary, is having a disagreement with his wife. Oh, you 90s men.
Well, I had a really good year. I decided, hey, why not reward myself? So I bought what I really wanted, a 48-foot cabin cruiser. Now, how much it cost me? I'll tell you how much it cost me. $300,000, not to mention the $20,000 for the custom teak decking. Now, here's my problem. The wife wants to call this incredible vessel Lulu Bell after her mother. Lulu Bell. So I say, no, we call it the Intrepid. So what do you think it should be called? Lulu Bell or the Intrepid?
Mr. Carl Reiner, born March 20th, 1922, 103 years ago, in the Bronx, New York. Born to Jewish immigrants, his father was a watchmaker from Austria and his mother was from Romania. In 1938, at the age of 16, Reiner was finding work repairing sewing machines when his older brother Charles brought to his attention a free drama workshop that was running nearby. Reiner has credited his brother Charles with intervening at a key point in his life and giving him the career he now has. 4 years later, Reiner was drafted into the United States Army Air Force to serve during World War II, and bizarrely, this is where he really got a flair for the theatrical. He started directing plays in French and auditioning for army majors and captains who were responsible for the Special Services Entertainment Unit. I didn't even know there was such a thing. Throughout his years in service, he entertained troops from Hawaii to Iwo Jima until he was honourably discharged in 1946. And during this time, he married singer Estelle Laboste, and many people will be familiar with his wife Estelle, as she is the lady who delivered the iconic "I'll have what she's having" line in When Harry Met Sally. In 1947, she gave birth to their first child. You all know him, Rob Reiner, a man who is now arguably better known in modern day circles than his father was. With a background in performance well and truly established, he began appearing in leading roles in several Broadway musicals throughout the 1950s. This led to a few comedic television appearances and writing credits on shows such as Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows, alongside his future longtime partner, Mel Brooks. After becoming a head writer and presenter on various shows into the 60s, Reiner really made a name for himself when he teamed up with Mel Brooks as a comedy duo on The Steve Allen Show. Their most famous performance, and perhaps the one that really put them on the map, was their 2,000-year-old man sketch.
2,000 years old. That true, sir?
Yes, you want to see my driver's license?
No, we have it authenticated. The Mayo Clinic has checked you out and said that you are 2,000. Sir, what has kept you alive for 2,000 years?
When I'll go in an airplane, if I'll go in an airplane, I'll never sit in the first two seats or the last two seats from an airplane.
You mean not sitting in the first two or the last two seats?
In the last two
has kept you alive? I don't understand that. Why has that
because
kept you alive?
if the plane, unfortunately, should take a flop out from the sky, you're going to go down with it and break your foot. Right?
Yes, but if the plane, as you say, flops out of the sky, everybody in all the seats will break their feet. I mean, at least.
Yeah, let me amend that. Any seat is no good.
In other words, you're afraid to fly in an airplane.
On the nosy.
As would come to be a staple of their partnership, Reiner played the straight man to Mel Brooks' fast-talking fool. Though Brooks' exaggerated wackiness in each sketch may seem to be the show-stealing performance, these were only possible due to Reiner's guiding hand. Their comedy routine expanded into a series of comedy albums and a partnership which would last his entire life. But away from the double act, Reiner began writing a television series based on his own personal and professional life. The show was later titled The Dick Van Dyke Show and ran for 5 years, with Reiner writing and making guest appearances. In 1966, Reiner made one of his first feature film appearances as Walt Whitaker in The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. I said it twice. I said I'd only say it once. More to come on that. A year later, he would make his first feature film directorial debut with Enter Larving. Alongside this, he continued his run of television work, hosting shows such as The Celebrity Game and Hollywood Squares in the 60s. He was an absolute chameleon in the entertainment world. By the start of the 70s, he was directing, producing, writing, and acting across film and television with aplomb. In 1979, he directed Steve Martin in The Jerk, a personal favourite of mine. In many ways, Reiner played a hugely significant role in Martin's early career, as he would also helm 3 further Steve Martin films: Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, in which he'd also star, The Man with Two Brains, and All of Me. He garnered Emmy Awards and received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. At the dawn of the 21st century, Reiner was honoured with the Mark Twain Prize for American Humour, with fellow comedians Mel Brooks, Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore, Steve Martin, and his son Rob Reiner in attendance. The 21st century would also see the birth of one of his few cinematic recurring characters. He played Saul Bloom for the first time in Ocean's 11 and would return for the 2 sequels. His television works, of course, continued, appearing in shows from House to 2.5 Men, sadly. He did voice work for numerous films and animations. He remained absolutely prolific. In 2008, his wife Estelle passed away just short of their 65th wedding anniversary. His friend and partner Mel Brooks remained by his side for his entire life. Reiner has said that practically every night Brooks would come over to his house to eat dinner, watch Jeopardy, and watch movies with him. In 2013, he described himself as an atheist. He said having seen the Holocaust play out in real time, he simply could not believe in the existence of God. He was a lifelong Democrat, and in 2018, he publicly denounced Donald Trump. Reiner's final contribution to the world of entertainment came during the initial phase of the coronavirus pandemic. Housebound, as most of us were, director Jason Reitman came up with a project that would raise money for charity. The project was called Home Movie: The Princess Bride, a star-studded tongue-in-cheek update of Reiner's son's infamous film. Carl Reiner appears in a reenactment of the final scene from The Princess Bride between the grandfather and his grandson. His son, Rob Reiner, lies in bed and asks his grandfather if he will return to read to him again. Carl Reiner turns to his son/grandson/ the camera/ his audience and says the iconic line, "As you wish." 3 days after recording that scene, and following an evening spent with his closest friend, Mel Brooks, Reiner became unwell and lost consciousness. He passed away on June 29th, 2020.
What would you like most for people to say about you and your life after you're gone?
He treated people fairly. He was just part of the mass of humanity, and he lived his life without feeling guilt because he didn't do anything that would give him guilt. And that's about it.
So the learning here for me appears to be that he is the steady hand behind comedy. He's the director behind the more showy characters. He's the stable leader when things could threaten to go off the rails. I think he must have picked that up during his time in the army, which is wild to me anyway, that he was able to learn his craft while serving. He's insanely prolific, but it does seem to me, probably because of my age and my location here in the UK, that my encounters with his work are fairly limited. I know about things like the Dick Van Dyke Show. I've heard about the Steve Allen Show, but my age, my geographical location means they're just not things I've really ever come across. So his reputation precedes him when it comes to my dalliances. I have listened to several skits he did with Mel Brooks, and I have to say, they're very funny. I'm very familiar with Brooks, and if Reiner is the guy who made Brooks, then Reiner is a guy who knows comedy. As a director, I've seen The Jerk, I've seen Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, the 2 Steve Martin vehicles. In addition to those, in terms of his acting, I've seen the Ocean's films, I've seen Rocky and Bullwinkle, Toy Story 4. These are nothing performances. I don't remember him from them at all. In terms of his personal beliefs, atheist and Democrat are 2 big ticks for me. So the guy had his head screwed on, it seems. I also love, this is personal, I guess, but I love that he was married to his wife for 65 years. Maybe it's the romantic in me, but we see far too many entertainers blitz through women as they get older. It speaks to an authenticity to the guy, for me. So I guess it's fairly true to say that I have no idea what to expect from his appearance in The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. I'm saying it twice. I don't know if he's going to be a straight man for one of the other characters, or if he's going to be dropping punchlines like they're going out of style. I know nothing about the plot really either. I don't know if he's going to have an accent, but if I were to wager a guess, I'd assume there's going to be some parody and satire at play here, and the humour, like with Peter Sellers' character in Dr. Strangelove, might just come from a grounded performance from Reiner. But let's see, we've bigged it up enough, we've said the title twice, too many times. Let's find out what happens when the Russians come. When the Russians come.
Hello there, this is your man in Moscow, Carlton Kaduli. This year, an estimated 23,000 Americans will visit the Soviet Union as tourists. We're interested in finding how many Russians are planning to visit our shores. May we speak with you, sir?
If you're so able to, you can do it.
What is your name, if may I ask?
Yuri Rozanov.
Yuri Rozanov. May I call you Yuri?
You could call me by my nickname.
What's that?
You. Yes.
Well, thank you. Are you planning in the near future to visit our great country?
Indubitably not.
You don't plan to visit?
Not in your tintype.
Are you interested in seeing America?
Not for a minute. We'll explain it to you. I have been there.
You have visited
Yes.
our fine country. When, sir?
I was there Sunday. Sunday a week.
You mean a week ago Sunday you were in America?
Sunday I was there.
Well, tell me, sir, how did you get there?
I got there, you guess.
Well, you were in a tour, an excursion?
No, I wasn't.
By plane?
No.
By boat?
Submarine.
That's
And
hard to
Ireland-
believe, sir. That's hard
It's
to
an
believe.
amazing story to behold, but we could demonstrate it to you.
The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, directed by Norman Jewison in 1966 and starring Carl Reiner, Alan Arkin, and Eva Marie Saint, and a whole host of other names that I'm not particularly familiar with. It's not quite the satire or the parody that I thought it would be. It is a funny film. It's surprisingly very good-natured and well-hearted. The comedy in it comes from the animosities and tensions between America and Russia at the time, as if that doesn't exist right now. As I record this, I'm time-stamping when I'm recording this, but yeah, things aren't looking good with Putin right now. So it's a Cold War comedy, but a gentle one. It feels like a Disney production, and I don't mean that from a critical point of view. It feels like a family comedy, but the comedy is not overwhelming. The tone of the story is very sweet and gentle. The concept, for those who aren't aware, a Russian submarine sort of crashes just off the coast of an American island, American town, like harbour town called Gloucester. And Alan Arkin plays the leader of a band of Russian Soviet soldiers. I don't know if they are soldiers. They're Russians that were on board this submarine. They have to come out on town to see if they can find boats to help unwedge their submarine so they can get away, but they don't want to be discovered. Alan Arkin has a very impressive Russian accent. And not only that, he speaks Russian for large portions of the film. Half of the film is in Russian, to be quite honest with you. It's subtitled, and if Alan Arkin had to learn those lines, which I believe he did, I don't think he speaks Russian, he had to learn those lines phonetically. He does very, very well with it. Carl Reiner's name is the first name in the credits, but Alan Arkin very much steals the show in this film, I have to say. We are introduced to Carl Reiner because when Alan Arkin's Russians enter this American coastal town, the first house they come to belongs to Carl Reiner. So Carl Reiner plays a man called Walt Whitaker. I'll speak a little bit more about him specifically afterwards, but Alan Arkin invades the house and quickly drops the ruse that they're actually Norwegians because they don't want to be discovered as Russians. Quickly drops the ruse because Carl Reiner's kid sees right through it. He's like, these are Russians. And holding them at gunpoint, he's asking for powerboats, motorboats. They need powerboats and motorboats. Lots of humour in how lines are delivered, poorly worded English translations of what they're trying to say. It's good. Alan Arkin is stealing the show here. Meanwhile, Carl Reiner's character sort of just has to respond to him. So yes, like I thought, the straight man. Another Russian is left in the house. He seems nicer than the others, but he's eventually chased off while the others go to town for a boat and a car to try and get out of the town. And the rest of the film is very strange because we then leave Alan Arkin and we leave Carl Reiner and we spend about half an hour with various townsfolk. It's a sleepy town. It seems like everyone there is at least 60 years old, and they all hear through the grapevine that Russians are there. And it's kind of like a farce. It's a comedy of errors. Everyone's hearing bits of information and making huge leaps to assume that the Russians are properly invading, when the reality is these Russians just want to get out of there. They're not trying to cause any harm. So the comic relief calls start coming in. Everyone's looking like they got caught with their pants down. All this misinformation is spreading. And I'm starting to get bored. After Alan Arkin's interactions, once we left him, the story is slowing down because all we're seeing is a lynch mob of elderly people sort of gathering guns and stuff. It kind of feels like a weird sea shanty war film of sorts because it's all these elderly people in the town who, you know, a lot of them would have fought in World War II, but at this point are hoping to see out their retirement and suddenly are being called upon again. I guess there's a charm in it, but I didn't really get it. At least I didn't like an hour in. There's a chief of police of the town who's like a John Wayne character. There's an old buffoon who sort of leads the men as a military leader, a self-professed leader of the men who's walking around with a sword the whole time. And all these men are just hanging around the town waiting for the Russians to appear. And it ain't too funny and it ain't too interesting, really. But it does have this weird, strange quirk to it, which is intriguing. And the quirk is that a lot of the humour gets dropped for large portions of the film, and it treats it quite seriously. And it starts, I don't want to say with great authenticity, but it starts probing at the idea of what if we're all wrong? What if these people aren't our enemies? What if they've been built up to be this monstrous thing, but the reality is they think the same about us? But then it starts claiming me back. Every time Alan Arkin comes back and every time Carl Reiner come back into the narrative, it pulls you back in because Alan Arkin brings the laughs. Carl Reiner does bring the laughs as well, but Carl Reiner actually brings the everyman to the story. And actually, I do need to talk about Carl Reiner here because he's so central to the premise of the film. Reiner is the head of this nice American family. He has a wife, he has 2 kids. He's a musical comedy writer who's vacationing in this town. He is the opposite of the Russians in their black uniforms, black hats, black leathers. Reiner, we're introduced to him. He's woken up out of his sleep. He's complaining about damp in the holiday home. He's wearing a dressing gown, and he dismisses his kids when his kid says that the Russians are coming with guns. So he kind of plays this character who's quite relaxed, domesticated, not up for a fight, really, and kind of like an everyman. There's no bravado to him.
We are nobody. We wish only to inquire where to find motor power boat for private use for some brief little time. You understand, sir?
Sorry, but I still don't understand. There are no boats around here.
No boats?
No.
This is an island with no boats.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, there are boats, some boats, but not around here. In town. I mean, in the harbor in town, but there are none around here.
Big boats?
Yes. Well,
motor power boats?
All different kinds of boats, yes.
Ask them if they're Russian.
A nice little boy there, sir. Which way to harbor, please?
Well, it's 5 miles down the road.
Ask them if they're Russian.
Peter, be quiet.
Very clever little boy. Very, very clever to see that my friend and I are foreigners here, but of course not the Russians, naturally. What would the Russians be doing on the United States of America Island? With so many animosities and hatreds between these 2 countries, it is too funny an idea, is it not? No, we are, of course, Norwegians.
And when the Russians come into his home, we get a series of gaffes, like he tries to take the gun away from one of the Russians after his kid keeps provoking him, and the gun gets caught in the curtains, and there's a set piece about the gun stuck in the curtains. It's a comical effect to show the ineffective masculinity that he displays and how disappointed his kid is in him. And he's really cross with his kid because he's like, why are you so bloodthirsty? Why are you always looking for problems? And then he takes a bike into town and he's cycling this bike into town, and he portrays this great idea of like vulnerable masculinity in this situation. It's probably how a lot of people would respond if invaders appeared at their holiday home. You wouldn't be ready for war. You'd be a bit like, well, Jesus, let's not do anything hasty here. But then we leave Reiner for about 30 minutes of the film. This is when it goes on to focus on the townspeople, and this is where it suffers a bit. But then an hour in, it loops him back into the narrative. He's reunited with Arkin. When the 2 are on camera, it's great. You can see the Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner dynamic because Alan Arkin really is the comedic chops of the film. He's not being slapsticky, but it is the accent that he's putting on. It's why he's delivering the lines, but he is very funny. And Reiner is the straight man, sort of propping him up a lot. That is until Reiner gets bound and gagged to a local woman who works the radio dispatch in the town. Let me tell you, there is so much hilarity to be found in these 2 being bound together. It's one of the funniest gags of the film. is trying to suggest ways for them to get unbound and get out of their situation, but they're rolling on top of one another. They're rolling down the stairs. They squeeze around to be face to face. She faints and lies on top of him. He's shouting, get off me, but his voice is muffled through the gag. It's funny. It's funny stuff, and it's probably some of the only slapsticky kind of humour in the film. It's around about this point that I start to clock the beauty of Reiner's character, because it really becomes clear that while the rest of the town are losing their head, he doesn't want bloodshed or violence on either side. He actually helps the Russians sometimes in the film because he doesn't want any attack or guns to be shot. He is the perfect American in many ways, and the one that we need more of. I've got to say, just, no sides, just helping human beings in a situation rather than patriotic vitriol of, oh, people are coming, we need to fight back. There's many moments of him panicking with his family. It is funny. He doesn't quite hit the levels of Alan Arkin, but he is funny. He's very, very human. And there is a point when he finally fires a gun at the Russians. And this is only when he thinks his daughter is at risk. And again, like I said, humour is dropped, and we go for quite a serious scene where he thinks he's killed a man. Fortunately, he didn't. We get a sort of peace handshake, a funny line from Alan Arkin. And towards the end of the film, we get this great final set piece where the Russians and the Americans come head to head. But because of everything that's happened in the film and because of some of the interactions, we actually see the Americans and the Russians working together to save a child who's going to fall from a bell tower in the town. And yeah, it's a little cornball, but it's delivered so well and with such heart that I actually buy into it and believe it. It is a very gentle film. I absolutely can see why Carl Reiner played this, because everything that I learned about the man as a sort of Democrat, as someone who was an atheist, someone who didn't take sides, who didn't really pledge allegiance to warmongering, I can completely see why he was right for this role. It is a good film, an okay to good film. It is too long. It goes on too long. It does walk this funny line between comedy and a sense of seriousness, but essentially it's poking fun at how people were reacting to the prospect of World War III, which 60 years later is still a very real threat. And the only way we're going to get past it is if we can laugh and joke about it. Apparently, according to director Norman Jewison, the film, which, as I said, was released right when the Cold War was happening, had a huge impact in Washington and in Moscow. Apparently, in Washington, it entered a speech in Congress, and a copy of it was actually screened in the Kremlin. And in an interview, Jewison said that not only were the Russians thrilled with the movie, they were disappointed that they hadn't thought of the plot first, and they really loved the scene where they work with the Americans to save the little boy who falls from the bell tower. Surprisingly, it was actually nominated for 4 Oscars as well: Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Actor for Alan Arkin. And Norman Jewison said that the reason he wanted Carl Reiner as the star was his belief that audience would more readily accept the character as a writer if he were played by an actor that was also known to be a writer. And as we've seen, Carl Reiner could do it all. Finally, one last bit of trivia for you. Contrary to popular belief that Alan Arkin speaks fluent Russian, in an interview about the part he played, he was asked if he could, and he said he can only recite the lines he learned for the movie. He speaks no Russian at all. So overall, it is worth your time. I quite enjoyed it. It is a little bit baggy. It is hard to follow and fall in step with, but by the end, it's very well-meaning and it has a good heart, and I enjoyed it.
I just really feel the need to make a connection.
Well, Niles, I think you've made a connection. It just seems a little bit extreme, though, you know?
So then, that's the dinner bell, which means our Crane connection of the week must be made. Time to link everything back to the episode of Frasier we just watched. Specifically, this is the point where we try to link Carl Reiner's Roger, calling into Frasier with a boat naming dilemma, to Carl Reiner's Whittaker Walt, or Walt Whittaker, the everyday American trying to keep calm in a sea of Cold War madness. I swear to God, some of these Crane connections just write themselves. Couldn't be easier this week. Roger was calling up, debating with his wife what to call the 48-foot cabin cruiser he just bought. Now, if like me, you had to Google exactly what a 48-foot cabin cruiser was, you'd see it's practically identical to the boat that Whittaker Walt helms at the end of The Russians Are Coming. There is a great set piece at the end where all the locals in their town's boats escort the Russian submarine away from their harbour so that the Air Force don't drop bombs on them. In fact, the whole film is largely about boats in some ways. Getting boats, steering boats, finding boats, ensuring boats aren't stolen. Boats are basically seen as safety and sanctuary in the film. And Roger's naming dilemma is minuscule in comparison to Whittaker Walt's supposed Red Terror dilemma when it comes to keeping control of the boats. And you don't need a tunneling electron microscope to see that connection. And sadly, that brings us to the end for another week. So let's say goodbye to the selling out of Frasier Crane, goodbye to Roger as he sails into the distance on either Lulu Bell or the Intrepid, goodbye to Whittaker Walt and his admirable attempts at representing the very best of America and the common man, and goodbye to Carl Reiner, a man whose legacy is far greater than I could ever hope to do justice on my humble podcast. And as always, thank you to you, dear listeners. Thanks for liking, subscribing, sharing, just for listening. You can stay up to date with all my upcoming episodes by subscribing to the podcast. Just search for Frasier on Film on all the usual podcast platforms to make sure you do not miss a single episode. You can connect with me online, on Threads, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, on all the other places using @Frasier on Film, and you can get in touch via email using FrasierOnFilm@gmail.com. So if you appreciate my attempts to prevent the outbreak of World War III, you might also find it in your heart to leave me a 5-star rating. The reviews are important, so please do leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Next week's episode is a Bulldog-centric one, as Frasier lets slip that the higher-ups at the radio station want him gone. Our guest actor for that episode will be talk show host Jay Leno, a man whose acting legacy certainly does escape me, so maybe we'll be needing that tunneling electron microscope after all. We'll be focusing on the only starring role he ever performed, opposite Pat Morita, yes, Mr. Miyagi, in 1989's straight-to-TV movie Collision Course. So long, Seattle. We love you.